This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out. We're going to go ahead and get started here pretty quick, but just a couple announcements. Make sure you stay tuned to the alumni social media as well as our alumni events page. We're going to be doing some more events like this and announcing more as we go here, getting into the springtime. And hopefully in the summer, we'll be able to host a few in-person events. We're still kind of teetering on what that's going to look like and everything, but we would definitely love to see all of you get involved that way. So again, the website where you can find all of our events listed and some other events across campus that you might be interested in is northcentralcollege.edu/alumni-events. And that's in the chat section here for you to explore as well. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. King, Dr. Ressler, and they're going to give us their short presentation here.
Hello, well, welcome. My name is Kathleen King. I am in the education department, teaching primarily graduates, teachers who are studying to become principals. And I am, more importantly for this talk, I am a mother. I have 5 kids of my own, and I also do foster care. So we've had kindergarten through post-college kids under our roof over the last 12 months. So nice to be with you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Ressler, and I'm also in the education department. Like Kath, I am a professor in education, and I also have children, not 5, but I do have 3 children, 3 boys, 5, 7, and 9. And so I've been having, as many of you I'm sure have had, the dual hats of working full-time while also trying to e-parent and help with the e-learning. And so I guess that's why we're here today, is to discuss all of this.
So we appreciate your time today. What we'd love to do is just kind of start by checking in with you to see what drew you to the presentation today, what were you most hoping to gain. So if we could just have people kind of unmute themselves and just share your name and what you were hoping to gain from today's presentation, that would be great, in just about 10 seconds or less.
So I'll go ahead and, I don't know, Shelley, if you're able to unmute, but if you want to type, if it's not possible to unmute, if you want to type in the chat box as well. I didn't know if you wanted to share, Shelley, at all.
Sure. I had to move away from the TV blaring because I have my 5-year-old home with me.
You know what? That's fine. You could have kept it on and blaring in the background.
It's real, right?
Where it's fine, yeah.
So I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 9-month-old. The 2 youngest ones are daycare. Ryan is doing remote learning in kindergarten, so he's home with us. And it's a juggling act every day. So I figured that hopefully there's some tips or words of wisdom from you all on how to balance all of this.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
And we're very wise, so it'll be just fine. Just joking.
We have the answer key right over here, and we'll be sharing that.
We'll solve it all for everybody. So good, great. Kristen, how about you?
Yes, hello. Kristen Guido. I'm an alum and a staff member, but I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and my 5-year-old is doing e-kindergarten as well, and my 3-year-old does daycare once a week because we try to kind of limit potential exposure if we can help it. So often my 3-year-old is here with me while I'm working. And yeah, I just, like Shelley said, I would love to hear tips and tricks, things I haven't thought of, or just, hear that we're all in the same boat and it's okay, because sometimes it can be pretty stressful. So very much looking forward to the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. How about you, Jared?
If Jared's got in the chat box that he wants to hear ways he could assist his nephew who's in remote learning in Ohio and a freshman in high school, and see what tips might apply.
Okay, wonderful. Dina, how about, would you be able to share, Dina, what you were hoping to gain from this presentation? And don't worry if there's background noise or whatever. We're not going to worry too much about it.
All right. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm actually in school right now. And I am supervising study hall while math is happening. And I thought I'd just listen in to just get a little bit more insight from folks outside of our school community.
Great.
That's great. And
Wonderful.
good to see you, Nina.
You too. I saw it this morning as I was scrolling and I thought, oh, maybe if the children are A-okay, I could listen in for a second. So I just wanted to hear and see what's going on in the world outside of Avery Coonley. So
That's great.
I have headphones on. I've got a mask on, so I might close my camera, but it's nice to see you all. And
And we will understand when you are not speaking, when you're muted in study hall.
Yeah, I know. So don't tell the kids I'm on a call. But if
There you
there's
go.
anything, let us know. All right.
Well, and that's really what this has been about, right? Is all of this multitasking and wearing multiple hats at once. And to Kristen's point, yes, this is very much about we are all in this together. This is one of the few times where I'm doing a webinar from work because otherwise you'd see kids climbing up on top of my lap, which would be fine, but that's just where I am today. So we wanted to take a moment for just to like be in the moment with one another and to be, sorry, the ads before video clips are always fun, but we wanted to just take a moment to be in the moment with one another and to really just breathe, to take some time to just breathe. And oftentimes when we think of breathing activities or meditation or all of these things, we think about, I don't have the time for it. So here is just one moment, 1 minute for us to breathe together. All you do is you follow the shapes and breathe in and out with the shapes. So we're just going to take 1 minute to do this together. All right, and as we're coming back from that, I hope that it helped to just breathe for a moment. I know the music might have sounded a little weird through your computer, but sometimes the self-care that we give ourselves might be just 1 minute, but that's really an important thing that I've learned through this time, and that a lot of educators who I've spoken with have been saying, and a lot of parents have been saying, is that that we need this time to just collect our thoughts, to breathe a little bit.
So much of what we are trying to do for others pulls from ourselves. And one of the things we really wanted to talk about was this idea of how you have to fill your own well before you can give to others. And we know that's much easier said than done. So just as on flights, when the flight attendant is talking about if oxygen drops, that you need to put that oxygen on yourself before you assist others. That idea just seems the opposite when there's so much need in front of you. Your kids have so many needs, you've got so many demands on you, and yet you really have to prioritize taking that moment for yourself, because unless you are able to kind of fill your well, you certainly cannot be there in the way that you'd like to for other people. And I think that's an important place for us to start. So I'd like to just start by asking if anyone has a particular self-care technique, something that they've been doing to try to take care of themselves that's been working well for them, that they could share with the group.
So one of my coworkers started a 30-day yoga challenge, and she was like, "Kristen, you really like this." And for me, it was like how do I have time for that though? Because by the end of the day, I'm just exhausted. I just want to sit on the couch and watch TV for maybe an hour before I go to sleep. But I was like, no, I'll try it. I'll do it. And it's so interesting because I've never done yoga before. Like, I've done yoga movements, but not like a true like yoga class. So a big part of this 30-day yoga challenge is breathing. And the breathing exercise that we just did, like that's very similar to the time that we spend in this 30-day yoga challenge. Like it's not just about moving your body, but it's about concentrating on your breath. And that was a surprising takeaway for me, that it's not so much about like the exercise, but it's about like the controlled breathing. And I found myself using the breathing techniques when I'm at work, when I'm like experiencing something that's a little bit stressful. I'll just start those breathing techniques, and it at least helps you get through it without becoming completely overwhelmed. So that breathing exercise is very, very helpful and replenishing.
That's great. And in just a minute, like that, we should be able to find literally 60 seconds for ourselves to just kind of center. Mindfulness activities can be really helpful in the same way of just paying attention to your body in space, and kind of how you're grounded. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Others?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, I don't have any kids. I'm 23, so I won't be able to relate to a lot of the challenges that I know a lot of you have faced with e-learning and everything like that. But sometimes when, you know, there seems to be a lot on my plate with a job and everything like that, I'll just take a minute. And it, like Kristen was saying, it's all about breathing. I just take a minute, I stand up, I walk around my house a little bit and just look out the window and just take deep breaths and kind of let the tension out in my back that I feel like I get sometimes. And it's just, again, I feel like it's all about breathing and just taking a break.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
And this is something that I find useful, but sometimes it's just a matter of like treating myself to a hot tea and a cozy robe, and that or a glass of wine, if I'm being real honest, at the end of the evening. But in doing that, it's not just a matter of going through the process of doing that, but being mindful and really spending that time being mindful of the fact that you are doing this to take care for yourself, and that you deserve this as a human being, and that, again, we're going through this collective trauma right now, but we need to recognize that and take care of ourselves in the moment and breathe. Did anyone else?
I think that prioritizing yourself is consciously prioritizing yourself at some point in the day is so important. I love that Dina is talking about how she's logged over 300 running miles a month. She wakes before the sun and heads outside, snow, wind, and cold, because the fresh air gives her life. And for me, I'm on the other end, late at night, going for a walk. So Dina and I might meet someplace in the middle. But that getting outside, that sense of the outdoors can make a huge difference.
I thought you were going to say you're on the other side, Kath, where I have just decided to like sit and relax on my couch sometimes, which is quite often
that might also be true. It just didn't sound as good, Mary Beth, but yes.
All right. So did you want to go to the next slide, Kath? Okay, great. So in terms of all this, we have a tendency of looking at, we have all these different pressures. We have work pressures, we have our kids, we have COVID, we've got a blizzard, we have all of these different pressures that are pushing down on us. And so realizing that we have to take those things in, but keep them in their spaces is really important. And this is not the time, if you logged on to see like, how can I get my kid ahead during this time, or how can I keep them really focused on excelling academically? we want to go back to the SEL goals with this and saying, let's focus on the social emotional piece of that, because if they're falling behind, it probably has more to do with that than it has to do with necessarily a struggle with academic. And that might be a struggle, and there, there are tutoring helplines, there are all sorts of resources that we'll also share at the end in terms of mental health resources. But in terms of parenting pressures, is keep coming back. We want to keep coming back to the idea that, this is a time to give ourselves a little bit of latitude and to be able to focus on the development of our children, focus on the development of our students, and that's okay, that we can set aside some of these pressures when we have the opportunity to do that.
So often I think we have this constant, like, that we're falling behind instead of recognizing that everything in due time,
Yes.
and I think that it's kind of like when a baby gets weighed, and you're looking at the percentile as if it's a grade on a report card, like, yes, 80th percentile. But babies need to be everywhere on those percentiles, and obviously they're good indicators of things we can keep our eyes out for. But it doesn't mean that that's that a child is like got a B- in weight. That in fact everything in good time, and that how we feel about that child's weight and that their development has a huge impact on how they'll develop, much more so than that number of the percentile. So really trying to not have these external ideas of where our kids have to be, that they're somehow behind when the whole world has been hit by the same pandemic, that they'll be out of opportunities, when in fact that's not, there's really no reason for us to feel that that's the case. Kids are remarkably resilient and have the capacity to learn at all different stages.
Yeah. Before COVID hit, I was like, 20 minutes a day of screen time. I mean, of course, we may watch a program or something together for my kids. They're pretty young. And now it's like, you know what? I need to get some work done, go off, enjoy that video, because I've realized that, whatever other things might be coming up, I need to be able to give myself some space to get things done. And if my kids are fine for a half hour to an hour watching a show, they won't be destroyed because of that half hour to an hour of watching a show.
And we often think about how our kids are doing social emotionally as if that's separate from how they're doing in school. And there's tons of research that is showing us how integrated those realities are. And in fact, that's why schools, even before the pandemic, were making a priority of social emotional skill development. Castle and the Illinois even having standards pertaining to social emotional development because of its importance. And this is just one example, this meta-analysis of 213 different studies that showed how social emotional skills development in 5 different areas led to an 11% gain in academic performance. It also showed that students were more likely to have better classroom behavior, less stress, when we know mental wellness is such an issue in schools today, and better attitudes about themselves and others. And so, and that's just one particular meta-analysis. There's all kinds of other evidence that shows about this relationship. So stopping, taking care of yourself, then taking care of the social emotional needs of your child, and knowing that that in fact will also end up being a positive for their academic developments. It's kind of that you've got to make sure a kid has food before you can go to the next level of helping them learn. You need to make sure the social emotional is taken care of before you can expect the academic flourishing.
Right. So this is a really great time to invest in ourselves and in our children when possible. And so we want to think about this in terms of grace and gratitude. So the grace, we have this set of questions here to kind of guide ways in which we might think about these things. How can we practice grace in our lives, and how can we practice gratitude in our lives during such an interesting time in our global history? And so as you look at these questions, how will I tell myself I'm enough? How will I work to recognize a struggle we all sometimes it's the grace we need to give to our children's teachers or other parents or children maybe facing during this time of collective trauma. How will I be kind to myself? And then also on the gratitude side, how will I focus on one positive thing from today? How will I show my children or students that I'm grateful for the small things they accomplish? As we look at that,
Sorry.
That's okay. As we look at that, I'd like us to consider what are the questions here, and we don't need to answer the questions, but what are the questions that really resonate with you? What are the pieces that as you look at it, you are maybe thinking a little bit more deeply about? And you might reject some of these and like, this isn't a question that's important to me, but what are the ones that are? What are significant to you? And we can just go ahead and either share in the chat box, or if you want to share out loud, just go ahead and unmute and share.
And as we're circling to that, I do want to share that in the chat box, we had a couple more self-care. I love that Jared talked about any physical activity from shoveling to walking dogs, and the weighted blanket and blue bloods, nice. And that Kristen certainly is encouraging that same idea that forgiving the screen time at this point. So thanks for sharing that. But if others want to share about the question that resonated with them, that would be great.
The question under gratitude, how will I show my children that I'm grateful for the small things they accomplish? I think it is more easily to name and voice negative things that are happening, right? Like if my son says something very rude, then I will respond to it. But if he says something very kind, I want that to be normal, but I'm not always like naming it as like, wow, that was a really nice thing to say, or that was really nice for you to help your sister, or something like that. And I have to more actively think about voicing that small thing that my kids might accomplish, because I think that in trying to balance being a successful worker, being a successful parent, and all of these roles, sometimes I become so hyper focused on that, that taking a step back is harder in this environment, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And with that piece too, realizing that in those moments where we fail to show gratitude or we fail to show grace, that we need to go back to giving ourselves grace for that failure, if it's even that. So just letting go of even that and saying, you know what, there is going to be a next time. If there's one thing we learned about this time, is that sometimes it feels very much like time is standing still, and we'll have plenty of opportunities to keep doing that. So again, it comes to that mindfulness of doing that work. But thank you so much for sharing, Kristen. Did anyone else want to share? If anyone wants to in the chat box too, you can. But if you want to just think about that in terms of these questions, and maybe you have your own questions related to grace and gratitude, and that's fantastic too. But seeing this as not only self-care, but care for others, and realizing that this is something we can do in very small ways.
We also know that this is a nice conversation, but then later you might be like, well, what do I do? So we wanted to just create a resource for you that you could come back to and investigate later. And so we focused on 3 different areas. One were self-care resources. So if you have other things that you want to send to us, I'll add it to this website, be happy to. My email and Mary Beth's email will be on the last slide. But some just ways for you to kind of explore some new ideas on how you can take care of yourself. And then the mental health and the academic support are 2 other landing pages that we have there for you. Under the academic support, you'll see some things that are intended to help with the e-learning and with the at-home learning aspect, the homeschooling things. We recognize that that is a new challenge for parents, but we also want you to know that really taking care of yourself and the social emotional needs of your student is one of the best ways to help them with their home learning. And so then we also have some of the mental health resources to specifically target kind of the wellness aspects and how to get mental health services as needed as well. So there's a NAMI reference on there as well. So if you want to scan that code, that'll bring you to that website. But I also understand that the alumni will be posting this and these resources for you on their site. So before
I was muted. Sorry.
Go ahead,
I was just gonna, that's okay. I was just gonna say, I know we've only got about a minute left, but we wanted to see at this point if there, if anyone had any final questions or feedback on anything that would be useful. We are grateful for each of you coming today and taking some time. I hope that this was useful to you, and I hope that the website is also useful to you. I will try and quickly put that in the chat box as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule, because I know things are hectic right now. But I know I can speak for pretty much everybody on this call. We really appreciate it. And of course, keep checking back in to the alumni website that is in the chat, as well as our social media pages for events like this and others as well that'll be coming up here soon. Yeah.
Connor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if it was posted before people joined, if they can see it. So you may want to put that alumni website back in.
Awesome. Yes, I will make sure to do that. Yeah, so the website is also just northcentralcollege.edu/alumni events. And that's where we will be posting the recording as well of this meeting, along with the slides that they presented. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat as well. And then, of course, you will be able to see Dr. King and Dr. Ressler's email in their presentation. But other than that, we hope you have a great rest of the day. And thanks again for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Very good. I thought that went pretty well. We didn't have great attendance, but I think that's going to bode well for the
This conference will now